All right. Well, thank you guys all for coming. This is awesome and super humbling that there's so many people. A couple quick housekeeping things. This is being live streamed, so watch your mouths. Second is if you could just kind of keep an eye for this camera, maybe not try to walk in front of that one. There's a couple on the side. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming here. And also, I'm not used to doing this live in front of people like this. I'm used to just me and one of these guys just kind of talking and there's not a bunch of people. So, full transparency, I'm a little nervous about this because I'm not used to this. And I don't know if any of you guys are used to this either, but thank you all for coming. I'm going to start this off with you guys may know these people. I think we know each other a little bit, but for the people who are not knowing or some of the people online, can we start off and say who you are, what you do, your favorite color, no, just who you are, who you run sound for. Let's start with Arpad and work our way over.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Arpad Seiko. I mix front of house for a country artist known as Chris Stapleton. My favorite color is fried green tomatoes. I've been with Chris for 8 years. Got to know Nick through one of his many interviews a couple of years ago, and he convinced me that I need to tell you all something about something audio related, and I'll attempt to do that. So, going on to Brian.
Good morning. Brian Hardiswick, front of house engineer for country artist Vincent Mason. Favorite color is summertime, not winter. I think I've known Nick the longest up here, 15 years now. And always a pleasure. Thank you for having me and all of us, some of my favorite engineers up here. And I'll pass it along to this good looking guy.
First question, mic control.
Yeah, right? Hi, I'm Kyle Gerhardt. I mix a rock band from the 2000s. I'm the engineer for Creed. I have been with Scott on his solo project since 2016, so almost 10 years doing divorced dad rock. So my favorite color is black.
I'm Kenny Sellers, front of house for 21 Pilots. I've been with them for about 10 years. I started as a systems engineer. Did that for about 2.5, 3 years with them, and then I've been mixing with them ever since. Bounce around to other gigs. My favorite color is not talking in front of people.
I'm Nick Dela Cruz. I do a social media channel called This Is Dela Cruz, where I get to ask questions and be in rooms with people who are way smarter than me. I was a touring audio engineer and production manager. One of my last tours was actually with Brian. It's with Hailstorm as a monitor engineer and drum tech, and you were with Pop Evil for it, and that was the start of my sobriety. And my last one was actually with this guy, with Scott Stapp, doing monitors. So I'm just faking it till I make it as well.
Is it on? Is it on? Okay. Robert Scoville. I do front of house for Kenny Chesney. I also do front of house for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions. And I'm in product development at EAW. My favorite color is distortion.
My name is Frank Scambolone. I mix front of house for Luke Bryan, and I am colorblind, so none of that applies to me.
I'm Trey Smith. I mix front of house for Thomas Rhett, and my favorite color might be black, I guess. If that works.
I'm Bruce Ryder. I mix a sound for a band called Five Finger Death Punch. I don't like colors.
So I'm just going to kind of ask some questions. It'll be a pop-up, whoever wants to answer them, and then we're going to open it up to some audience questions. If you want to ask them the hard-hitting questions, and I'm sure we're just going to say it depends, but this time it's educational. So the first question I want to do is, what is one piece of unconventional advice you'd give to someone starting out in live sound you wish you would have known?
Sometimes quiet is good.
Pain.
No. Go ahead.
I wish I had known about controlling the level so that I didn't have mixes that were too loud and too harsh or too boomy. I wish I had known that at the beginning. That learning curve to get there was a challenge. So I think that's what we're all trying to figure out, is how to make it not painful, right?
When you get on the bus at night after the show, at some point before you go to bed, put your earplugs in and sleep with your plugs in.
All right, talking about SPL. How do you create perceived power and impact without simply just turning it up? I know a lot of times we're asked to hit a number, and in reality, that number doesn't really mean a lot, and we can get more than impact with just trying to hit a certain SPO.
So for me, like dynamics is the answer to that one, because it doesn't have to be loud to be good. I also like to, carry a big stick and not have to use it. So I like having headroom in my system and not getting anywhere near what the system limiters or the limitations of the rig is. So I tend to carry more when I can, and then use dynamics to make it feel bigger than it really is.
Yeah, I'd say dynamics is spot on with that. Like bringing low moments into your show so that you can have big moments that aren't like if you have a song that's at 92 to 95 dB, then the next song being at 98 dB is going to sound massive. It doesn't have to be 105 at that point. So making sure you can work with your artist to build a set list that is like has ups and downs, and make sure everyone knows that you're like that's your goal and you're going for that. And I think you can have a much bigger feeling and sounding show without the overall level being that high.
The issue that he's bringing in, like as it comes down, yeah, you might have some things that sound not as impactful at volume, but that's when imaging becomes to play the part, right? Instead of this in the face, you can start moving things outward and still maintain volume levels that aren't painful to people in the seats.
I think also finding space in the mix with frequency control. So basically using frequencies wisely. So as you craft the mix, finding what space needs to be where for what instruments. So you don't overcloud things and overclutter the mix. If you can allocate the areas of the frequencies for each instrument to have its own space, then you don't have to turn up as much for everything to speak well.
So I'm going to give you a little perspective on a little bit of a tangent to this answer. So I think part of this answer comes in understanding who your audience is, right, and what their expectation is. And I would love to tell you I've mastered this. I have not. I constantly kind of battle and wrestle with this idea of getting your show at the right volume for your audience. And I've done it where I've been too loud, and I notice it. And what happens is if it's too loud, that audience member feels isolated because they can't hear other people around them cheering and enjoying the show. If you get it at the right volume where they can hear the rest of the audience, the thing just grows and grows and grows. The audience response grows and grows and grows. So, there is a right volume for it, and if you can get that right volume right, it's actually pretty easy to make it impactful. Like you can be very, very intentional with your dynamics control, either at the mix or with the band. You can make those moments happen really good. And the cool thing about it is when you get it right, the audience just enhances all of this dynamic stuff in the show, right? If you're just blasting past them and they feel isolated, they just kind of, they'll cheer and they'll sing along and stuff, but they aren't really engaged because it feels insular, So that's my answer to that.
Just to jump off of what Robert just said, not only do you have to take the audience into consideration with volume, but also the artist you're working for. What's appropriate for them. What's appropriate for their style of music. I work for a country artist who's just got great songwriting chops and a great voice, and people aren't there for a loud show, but his show isn't meant to be loud. It doesn't serve the songs properly. It doesn't serve him presenting his art to the audience properly either. And then also to talk a little bit about where Trey was at, as far as the mix, another thing I found that works great is, this steel guitar isn't loud enough. So do I bring up the steel guitar or do I bring down the Leslie and bring down the snare drum? because that can be.
We've got a bunch of different genres. I know you guys have mixed for different genres. I want to talk about letting the song dictate the sound, and mixing for that song and mixing for that sound. What is your guys' mindset going into that? Have you ever had a technically perfect sound that was completely wrong for the song? Because I know, Andrea Bocelli last night wouldn't work for that. So what is your mindset going into that, especially going for a genre that you're used to and you're used to listening to? You like the sound for it, you know how it is. Now it's totally opposite of that.
So, like, for me, one of the first things that I did with taking over the Creed thing was I called the artists and I asked them, like, what do you want to sound like? Because sometimes artists don't always like the way their records sound that they made 25 years ago. And so speaking, specifically with Creed, it was like, hey, Flip, do you want your snare drum to be dry like the record? He's like, no. I want big, modern sounding drums. Okay, cool. And going through and having the ability to speak with your artist, because I always look at it as it's our job to take the art that they're doing and spread it to everybody. So getting the artist's vision of their sound has been important for me. So in terms of going genre to genre, you can't just take a preset and it's not a one size fits all. It's kind of like you have to fit it to the music and also what the artist wants to sound like, in my opinion. We're in the business of customer service.
I went from Alice in Chains to Luke Bryan. Right? You think anything I did to Luke has anything to do with what I did with the other artist, you're out of your mind. Like, they don't play the same. It's not the same material. It isn't the same snare drum. Presets don't work, right? If anybody could agree on anything, they don't. They're a great starting place for a lot of people, right? Me included. But you can't, I did this on this tour, so it's got to work here. Like, you have to be open-minded, especially when you're recreating somebody else's songs, right? Again, Arpad brought it up. You're in service of the music, not your idea of a drum set, right? What you think is great in your house and your headphones is not real good in the song that you're mixing now for a completely different artist. You have to be open-minded. You have to be flexible. That's what we're supposed to do. Make that sound as good as possible, not make it sound like the thing I did 5 years ago, right?
I'll just say this about Luke Bryan. I went to hear Luke Bryan at one point, and my response immediately was, well, it's not Alice in Chains. I mean,
I'll say to be teachable or to be able to receive criticism from whether it be the band, the artist, music director, management, whoever. I think sometimes as sound people that we like to think we know it all, maybe, or and I think something that I've learned by doing this is the more flexible you're willing to be, or the more you're able to chase an idea that someone on the team may have, the more trusted you'll become as part of the organization. And that is what helps you then therefore keep your job as well. So I think just to be teachable, to be able to receive criticism and not let it offend you and think that they're attacking you, but that maybe you can grow from something. Maybe you can learn something that you didn't hear yourself. Yeah.
I've had the both the curse and the blessing of working for an artist that every song is a different genre. So like especially when I first started, it was like, wow, I got the drums sounding amazing on this song, and then the next song, and it's like, oh, they don't need to sound like that on this song. This is a ukulele ballad. All right, cool. And then this next song is an EDM drum and bass kind of a song, and the next one's a hard rock, and then you take that and you go to a vocal, and it's like, I have a singer in the first 4 songs of my set. I've got a singer that's got a mask on and wearing a mask, and then he's got a 58 that's gutted because they wanted to put LEDs in it. There's no windscreen on it, and so that's what he's using for the first 2 songs. And then the third song, he's got distortion on his vocal, and the 4th song, he takes his mask off, and then the 5th song, he's in the audience in the 300 level, and it's like, all right, you've got to overcome and just make every song as good as it can be for what it is and what genre it is. It has taught me a lot about, like, there are no rules to it always has to sound like this.
Yeah, I'll just pile on to what they're saying here, and try to distill it down to this. Look, guys, we all need to know all the consoles out there. We need to know how they operate and all of that sort of thing. But as music mixers, what we must know and must understand is music. We need to understand what makes a given genre tick, and then we need to distill that down to say what makes this song tick, and then present that to the audience. You're going to translate that to the audience, right? And that means faders are not just going to come up and sit. You're not going to get a mix that happens and you stop. As the little purple man from Minneapolis once told me, those faders go up and down, Right, got it, So there's nothing wrong with reblending your drum kit for a given song. Not every song is snare drum forward, right, or kick drum forward. There are times when that drum kit needs to pull back and leave space for other things. Arpad kind of knocked it out of the park over there, and it's a great mindset to have. It's like, does something need to be louder, or do I just need to reveal it, right? With some minus moves around it. You have to understand what is important at any given moment of the song and mix the song, right?
And
When I'm
speaking
listening,
to that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
when I'm listening to a virtual sound check, for example, and working on it, oftentimes to get this balance, I'll listen at a very low volume, and I'll see what pokes out and what is not audible at that, and that helps me sort of balance the mix so that no matter what system I put it through, be it the bathroom speakers in the arena or the cohesion main system that we're mixing through, it sounds balanced and even. The snare isn't like way too loud or way too soft, or the vocal isn't a weird tone. So to get that balance, listening at a very low level, I think is important and revealing to the to what you got going on.
All right, that kind of brings up another thing from bathroom speakers. Consistency between venues, going from bathroom speakers to stadiums. So how do you maintain tonal consistency night to night when the room is completely different? And what do you intentionally not try to make consistent?
My system engineer, Bryson Jenkins, is in the back of the room right there. Every single day, there's a procedure from the beginning of load-in to the time we take over the PA system that is the same every single day. System response as close as possible every single day. Everybody sitting here is looking at a gigantic amount of technology that's gone into getting us to look at what we're trying to listen to, right? You can take objective measurements, make sure that the system is aligned, timed, and correct. Not everybody's shape that they want on it is the same. It's not what we're talking about, but it has to be consistent for you. Otherwise, you're playing with your desk every day, wasting time, right? And that is it and be all. He doesn't have to chase my mix. I don't have to chase his system engineering. And that is the easiest way, most consistent way I have found to get it to work. For me, there is no other way.
And kind of speaking to that, as a front of house engineer, if you want consistency, especially if you wind up having different systems engineers and different sound systems across your career, you should always start out, you should have a trace that that this is what I want to hit. Like, I hand every new SE I get my smart trace. So like, hey, this is what I want to hit. This is how I like my subs and my mains to cross over. This is my process. And yet, like, yes, some of that's because I came from being an SE. But then I went a step further and I took my reference monitors and I made them match that trace so that when I'm sitting mixing in a corner in my reference monitors, it translates. But that consistency helps from tour to tour, from SE to SE, from sound system to sound system. It's, not like giving everyone around you the tools to do their job the way they need to as well is super important.
So everything that everybody has said, period. Also, making sure that your mix can translate down to mono has been important for me, because there's a lot of the large arenas or stadiums that are not truly getting stereo sound. Like your venue is probably 20 to 30% is perceiving the mix truly in stereo. Even when you're flipping your outfills out and things like that, the amount of seats that are actually mono versus the seats that are stereo is something that I found to be important. So just double checking things, that things are summing back down to mono, and when they do sum to mono, that it doesn't get weird, has been helpful for me.
I think I would just add this mindset to it if you want to take this on. I've gotten pushback on this in the past, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. So like when we're mixing in the studio or we're getting sounds in the studio, the constant is the monitoring environment. The variable are inputs, performance, fader, etc. In live sound, that flips upside down. The PA and the room is the variable every day. And what should be the constant is what's coming off your console. Otherwise, as Frank said, what ends up happening is the dog starts chasing the tail. You know, you push up an input and you kind of go, that doesn't sound right. Okay, well, why doesn't it sound right now? Is it the source? Is it something I'm doing at the console? Or is it the PA today? What's it going to be? So the more constants you can build into that, the more efficient you can be on a day-to-day. And just my take on it, I want that output of my console to be a constant. I don't want to have to mess with that every day to get the PA to sound right. Now, real world, do I adjust things on the console for a given day? Of course. But on whole, that thing sounds the same on day 1 as it does on day 27 of the tour. You know, and I record the outputs of my show every night and pop them up for the band to review every night. So if there's these big swings in tonality night to night, they're just like going, what's going on out there? You guys okay out there, you know? So that's my take on it.
I'll say, too, going off of what Robert said, how to get that constant for me has been setting my environment where I build the mix to be as accurate and flat as possible. So therefore, my mix, and there's a million different ways you can go. That's a rabbit hole of a conversation. But what happens then, I've found great experience in being able to do that. So therefore, if I'm on a different festival PA, my mix will still translate no matter if it's Cohesion or L Acoustics or D&B or JBL or Adamson or whatever, because my mix is built so that it translates in whatever environment. And then you can even take it a step farther and say, how could it translate for a board tape, or how could it translate for a broadcast if you're taking your left right for a live stream or something like that, which happens a lot, by the way. And so to be able to do that so that your mix can translate, you have to build your mix in an environment that is accurate and flat. Not in, like if you were to build it in this room, you're going to have lots of weird stuff happening, right? And so you'd have to try to get your initial mix build to be as accurate and flat.
How many, just here on the panel, how many people actually use a full-size PA system to build their mix as opposed to a set of reference monitors? Like how many people use reference monitors?
I use both.
Go 12s on top of 2 subs left and right, like 4 of them in the corners here, and you're just doing rehearsal.
I use both.
Something I was going to add in there real quick too. Like right now we're on a club tour, so we don't carry our own PA. We're not carrying an SE. So knowing how to use Smart and the tools that you have at your advantage, one, to make sure it's in time, the PA is working properly, working with the house guy to make sure they understand what's happening in their processing. Just the amount of times on this tour I've walked into the room throwing up Smart and they're like, oh, we weren't aware of that. So weird. So just, yeah, you know, just knowing the, utilizing the tools that we have at our fingertips when you're getting a different situation every day is equally important when you can't carry everything with you.
I'd also like to offer like a slightly a different angle to this. You know, going between all the different PAs, going to different rooms, going to different situations. Often, even when your trace matches perfectly, it's time aligned, everything's great, they translate different. Different sound systems offer different things. You know, some might have this beautiful musical low mid range, and some might be super punchy in the kick drum range. You know, other things might have like little reverb tails that you didn't notice in the rest. It's like I just try to lean into whatever I'm getting as well. Like I'm not gonna fight it if it's enhancing my mix for that day. So I don't know, maybe some people would still fight it and always aim for the exact same thing, but I'm like, today I've got this, and I'm going to lean in and utilize it for what it can do instead of fighting it to make it try to do the exact same thing I did yesterday. But that's just me.
Yeah,
That's good advice.
I agree with that. I kind of do the same thing, especially with artists going from arena to amphitheater to a festival to a casino. It's like, oh, this sounds completely different. I could, work all day at trying it to get the trace to match my other traces, or as he said, lean into what attributes this current PA and this current situation and this sound has, and utilize it to your best ability. To be honest, it's not going to, at least for me, it doesn't seem like it's detracting from the show or representing my artist in any way. It's just like, oh, this is a new environment. Let's listen to, maybe I will hear something like, oh, that reverb is way too much, or I like the way the snare sounds here. How can I get that snare sound in other environments? So yeah, utilizing that difference can be very beneficial. Be open, be willing to learn from some of these experiences, not try to fight them and say it must be how I always have it. I mean, obviously consistency is important, but the ultimate consistency is providing a fun show for the audience and making sure your artist is happy.
I know we all heard the stories and see the stories of bands that are coming up and they hit a level to where the people that were riding up with them, they're now gone. They're bringing in the A-team because they don't know how to handle the A-team. We all seen engineers that are mixing at arena levels, that opener slot, and that mix that they built doesn't translate as well, and they're kind of lost in that. How did your mix change going to that slot and going up to that next level to where I'm just kind of lost now? And what advice do you give people like, hey, I want to be at that A-team level, be able to ride it all the way up? Because I know we have some beginner engineers as well that hey, I want to be there and I want to learn from you guys now and not have to, my job is now taken over by one of you guys.
Less is more.
Being a systems engineer for as long as I was, and working for the headlining artists and then seeing opening acts come in, just realizing oh, I don't want to be that guy. Coming in with, a country artist and it's got this bombastic kick drum is like, well, that's cool and all, it sounds great, but it's not the right thing to do. And also being respectful and mindful of the fact that you are the opening act. And there, I personally, when I systems engineer, and even now as the front house engineer, I tell the opening act engineers, mix the best show you can. If it happens to be on the RTA louder than my show, I don't give a shit. As long as you have a good show and it sounds good and everybody's happy. Have fun, but be respectful. Be mindful of it. And you'll just ingratiate yourself to other people in the industry that way. And you'll find okay, less is more. Far out.
I think going on, we said it earlier, just being teachable. I know I spent a lot of time as that first of three engineer or second of three engineer in the arenas before I got the okay, cool, this is my show and I get to spec everything. Being able to take criticism from the system engineer or from the other front of house engineers when they give you advice or they're teaching you something, they're not trying to be mean. They've just done it longer most of the time and they might know something that you haven't mastered yet. So being teachable and learning from, listen to the SEs. I mean, they're the ones that are doing, stuff with the rig every day. They're going to perceive something, and they're also walking the entire arena or stadium where you're sitting in one place. So sometimes they'll give you some really good advice of, hey, what you're doing isn't working over there. It's only working or serving you where you're sitting at in the room. So being able to take that advice from the other engineers and from the system guys and not getting offended by it or feeling like they're bringing you down. They're truly just trying to help. I know I've had a couple opening engineers where we spent half a tour trying to, help them up, and they just fought us the entire way because they thought we were being mean to them, and it was not the case.
All right, so I'm going to have a little bit of an unpopular opinion on this. Yeah, it's true. It could happen. It could happen. But I want to preface it first by saying I want Frank to definitely answer this question. Because did you see his answer to this on Dela Cruz? So I need you to redo that here, talking about your early days of coming in under, I think it was under Mick, right? Yeah. Right? So I'll answer and then you can go.
All right.
All right, so
Robert
I know,
watches
I
my
set it up and then light up a room and leave. There we go. So,
You watch my videos?
I do, yeah, I do. I check them for content, spell check, grammar, everything. It's just how I roll, Nick. But I would say, I don't think I would ever say this to an up-and-coming engineer on the riser. We would have to do this socially and talk about it. But I would say to you, and go to your quiet place for a second, and you got to realize you can't let your insecurities mix the show. Okay? Your validation as a person and as an engineer is not based on your bass drum sound. Okay, there's a whole lot more to it. So you've got to learn to turn all that off when you're sitting at the console and be sober and real about what you're hearing and be open to criticism. Because, you can have the most wacky criticism in the world come up to you, but somewhere in there is probably an inch of truth. And if you're open to it, you can find it and you'll grow, right? So be open to the people around you. Don't let your insecurities mix the show.
So I told the story once on Nick's interview, and I'll tell it again because this was pretty much a moment that steered me in the right direction, and then it was cemented later on by Dave Scaff and Howard Page. Dave is no longer with us, but I was 3 weeks into mixing front of house after 12 years of mixing some of the loudest bands on earth with wedges, side fills, and all of the nonsense that the 80s and 90s brought with us as far as stage volumes, right? I was 3 weeks in. I was struggling because I thought, this is easy. I don't have anything pointing at a microphone. It's pointing the other way. So this is going to be easy, right? Now I'm standing in front of one of the best that's ever to do it, right? Mick Hughes was crushing with Metallica. Whatever your opinions of the band are, whatever, that guy changed a lot, right? So his opinion meant a little bit to me. And he stopped, and one day he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing a line check." "No, mate, you're annoying everybody. All you're doing is changing knobs, and it sounds good right here in an empty room. And then tonight I watch you for an hour spin your knobs back to where you were yesterday. You're not doing anybody any favors." So it was a very sharp lesson in don't waste time. Don't tire your band out, an hour of them on stage. Now that we have virtual sound check, don't tire the entire arena out with, the rendition of like the fourth song in the set. Like, it's not for that. But it was a good reminder of like, you might think you're doing something, but you're really not.
I feel like I feel like another thing to kind of point out here is understanding the tools of your system as well. Even like, some of us came up as systems guys, some of us came up as studio engineers. We all have different paths, but no matter, where you came from, understanding all the tools that you are working with, I can't tell you how many times I've like pushed up the fader and gone, oh wait, something's actually wrong with like that hang, or something is not right with the relationship between the sub and the main or whatever. And I would go like, well, I don't know this system. And then, I do some research and I find out, oh, there's this one little button that if somebody had pushed, then my day would have been better. So I just encourage you to go out and learn the tools. You don't have to take all the classes and do all the things, but like at least learn the terminologies so you can ask the questions. Oh, is AP mode at power or glory? Is auto filtering for the low frequencies on? What array size is on this PA, so that you can gain more information about what you're hearing instead of just immediately trying to hack the PA to make it sound like you're used to. Try to use the tools to fix it first.
All right, next question is, mixing for award shows and broadcast. I know that is quite a transition for people. And some of the times, I mean, some people may not even know what that's like, and I feel like somebody's got some issues with that. But really, going into award shows and going into broadcast stuff, it's a whole different world that you may not even be able to touch the console, and you may be able to give advice to someone who's been there for 30 or 40 years and doesn't want that advice. So what's been your experience with award shows, going to that? What's your frustrations or advice to someone who's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to walk into that. Oh, I remember that from that show that guy does, or that AES man.
Be humble. One of my first events like that, I thought I knew more than the person in the truck, and I didn't.
For me, it's always been, with Chris, he's such a great artist, and, he's very simple. I mean, our whole show's 22 inputs. So I usually tell the front of house mixer, like, hey, this is going to be the funnest song you're going to mix your entire evening. Have fun with it. Mix up a batch of rock and roll soup, add some steel guitar. You've heard the song, you know how it goes. And it sets them at ease, it feels like. We're like, all right, somebody's not breathing over my shoulder, and he's just letting me have fun. And, it always works out great because, I'm in that fortunate position where Chris does write great songs, and they're fun to make sound good. And I let this engineer who doesn't have the opportunity that I do to get to mix somebody like Chris on a regular basis, to have fun and enjoy it, and it always works out great.
Yeah, that guy in the truck is also more than likely a very, very good mixer. They don't need, the hi-hat's loud enough, right? They don't need that kind of advice. And who works well like that with somebody over their back? Nobody. Let them do their thing. 90% of the time, you're right there, Interpretation of the song.
I'll say, speaking as a person who's been on both ends of that now, where I've mixed broadcast, I've also mixed front of house at award shows, and I've also been the incoming engineer. I know when I'm at these shows doing these things, what I need from you is to come in and decode the songs they're going to play. Who's going to take the solo? What's the color part in the second verse? Blah, 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 blah. I don't know these things, especially for things like the Rock Hall. I mean, I'm not at a single rehearsal. Right? And we're going to have, 10 bands, 12 bands coming in on the biggest moment of their life. We start sound checks and camera blocking, and they expect it to sound like something right now. The producer definitely expects to hear something out of the PA and hear it going. So, I need to be able to turn to you and go, who's going to take this solo? Is that the right guitar level for these songs? I mean, I need to know that information, So that interaction to me is vital. I want you there, whether you're in the truck or at front of house. I need help there, right? I mean, I'm going to be mixing 14, 16 acts on the day, right? So, it becomes mental overload at some point. I mean, you can only take so many notes, So.
Also, I think for helping coming into someone like you, documentation. Like, you're very, very good at your documentation.
Preach, brother.
Because being able to hand over to the broadcast team, whether you're giving them a copy of your split, you're giving them just stems, you're giving them whatever, or you're like, okay, I'm at Jimmy Fallon and I don't get to touch anything and I've got to stand over you while my artist is on TV. That documentation is huge for
Dude,
broadcast
let me
guys.
just try to put this in perspective for you. Like when we're doing something like Rock Hall, I mean, you're going to be doing maybe 8 acts in one day to get it going, right? And in the lead up to that, we all have received input lists from the artists, et cetera, that we've entered in, programmed into our consoles. I mean, I spend almost a week, maybe more sometimes, programming and getting ready for all of these acts before I ever show up on site there. So when you show up on day of show and say, well, we're going to add a few things, or, we're actually bringing playback along with it, it is, I cannot describe to you how disruptive that is. It completely, like, if you're going to be changing things, I'm mixing one act and the next act is coming with the changes. I can't start your rehearsal until I get those changes implemented on the console. It's just so self-defeating to the thing. And we've had weeks. It's like, we've had weeks, folks, and you're going to throw this on me today? Now, I'm making it sound like this happens every once in a while. This happens all the freaking time. It's maddening. It's absolutely maddening. So I don't care whether you're in a club, you're coming to a festival, or what. Have your input sorted out, for Christ's sake, folks.
But that seems to be more a decision made by the artist than the engineer, it seems. But
There's a
you
question
blame
in the
me, I
gallery.
know.
We'll get to questions in one. I'm going to transition in 1 second.
And at this award,
Yeah.
don't deflect. That's what Robert meant.
I mean, I'll take that. But at the same time, I will say that's your responsibility to go to them and say, hey, we have to have this buttoned up, and this is why. Because we get there and we start doing this stuff, you're the one that's going to hurt, not the production, you know. So it's on our shoulders to make sure that's right. Now, is it always going to happen? No. Yeah, I know you are, Lauren. So.
How do you really feel, Robert? I feel like you're holding back a little bit. So I've got a bunch more questions, but I think what I want to do is I want to turn it around, and I want to open it up to questions. If you guys don't have any, I'll go back up to this thing. But we've got 2 people with microphones. So what I ask is raise your hand, and one of these people will come and hand you a microphone, and let's go. We got one already.
Thank you. Check. Thank you. This one's for Mr. Scoville. I thought it was really interesting when you said what you have seen of audiences who are greeted with more SPL than you are giving them. In your experience, for whatever reason, what have you experienced with audiences that are greeted with far less SPL than they're expecting?
Yeah, it's a similar thing, ironically, where it becomes almost too social in the audience, where they don't pay attention to the show. Now they're partying and talking about last night's game and all kinds of other things. And you can, if you're paying attention, you can watch and see this in the audience. There is just a right volume for any given audience to engage them. Too loud and it isolates them. Too quiet and it socializes them. You know, so you just got to pay attention and really understand that you're on it. You know, one of the best kind of reality moments for me with this was watching Sean Bevan mix 9 Inch Nails. And they had, at the show I was at, they had a big mosh pit set up down front. And he had the system broken up into the long throw and the near field for the mosh pit. Like he had his own system for the mosh pit, or his own master fader for the mosh pit. And at one point in the show, he said, watch this. And he just started pushing up the master fader, and the mosh pit went ballistic. It went crazy. Like he just had the crowd on a fader, you know. And I remember thinking, boy, there's some lesson there, you know. I mean, there's some real lesson there.
So I know there's like a lot of argument when it comes to subjective and objective mixes. How do you like approach that whenever you think about like what you're hearing might be different from how somebody else is hearing something? So like when you're mixing for the audience or when you're mixing for a room or even mixing in front of other engineers, like how are you approaching that? If like one engineer's like, it's too bass heavy, and the other engineer's like, well, there's not enough bass. Like, is there an objectively like you should always hit this, or is a lot of that just come down to what the band is after, what the artist is after?
My take is that we're in the customer service industry and we serve the artist, right? So at the end of the day, the artist is the one that should have the opinion on what they sound like. And then after that comes all the other tiers of however the political spectrum is, whether it's the MD that comes after the artist or it's the management. You know, obviously you have rules and regulations. You get over to Europe, there's SPL stuff. But in terms of the tonality, for me, it's the music and the artist are the dictators of that. We're just making it loud.
I so want to answer this question with an unpopular answer. Yeah. I don't care what other people think. I just do not care. I do not care what other engineers think. Do I care what the audience thinks? Certainly in the macro. I need them to enjoy the show. But you have to get to a point as a mixer that you believe in what you're doing. You believe what you're doing is going to serve that audience, like Kyle says. And you got to leave the rest of it out of it. Engineers, guest engineers coming to your show, do not listen with the agenda that the audience listens with. They just do not. And we can sit around and talk about it all night after the show. At the end of the day, tomorrow I'm going to do it just like I did it tonight. So it's kind of a growth thing. Like you've got to get to a point where you believe in your skills, and you just throw it out there and say, "This is what I have to offer. Let's see how it goes."
I fully agree with Robert there, as an unpopular opinion. But also, as far as the audience's perception, they don't know what a snare drum sounds like. We're providing the information like, all right, all you knuckleheads, this is what a live snare drum sounds like in a big concert. This is what screaming guitars sound like in a live concert. Because, we hear a live show, 100 times a year. For some of these people, it's once every 5 years, or give or take. So they have no baseline as to what, a live band sounds like in a big room with a big PA. We're providing that experience, and their I guess their baseline is like, oh, that's what it's supposed to, or that's what it sounds like. Whether it's supposed to, it's kind of a weird way to put it. So for them, it's like it's the greatest snare drum they've ever heard because it's the only snare drum they've ever heard.
Too kind of on that is the vocal. The vocal is so important, and a majority of the crowd, the audience, they need to hear that very first thing that's being spoken into that microphone, or they're going to think something may or may not be strange. So the vocal, as far as like objective, every night when that show starts, when he walks up to that microphone, needs to be on top and clear as day to everybody that knows that song.
To expand on the vocal, it's all for the artists that I work with. His talking in between songs might be more important than the actual songs in a way, because he might talk like this. He might be talking to and you have to make sure he's heard because he's interacting with the fans, and that's what they come there for. So, yeah.
That's totally true. And with my artist, he talks so much quieter than he sings, and he gets more on top of the mic, so you have that proximity effect, so it gets more mushy and mumbly. So I have a second fader for his vocal that is just all high end. And when he's talking between songs, I punch that in, and it has that little extra sibilance just to get some clarity. And as he said, the talking between songs is very important because nobody knows what he's going to say as far as the audience is concerned. When it comes to the songs, everybody knows the lyrics. And a great engineer by the name of John McBride told me, like, asked me, Arpad, are the vocals loud enough, or do we just know the song so well that we're hearing all those lyrics subconsciously? So that's another thing to take into consideration. Like, all right, are the vocals loud enough? I've heard this song 100 times sung live by this guy, so I'm hearing the vocals whether they're there or not because I know he's singing them. But is the audience perceiving that same thing? So, you're fooling yourself. So sometimes, I find myself having the vocals a little bit more ducked than some people might find appropriate. And as Robert said, I don't care because it sounds good. And I feel confident that that is representing the song properly. And I look around and people are still singing along. So I'm like, all right, I guess they can hear the vocals well enough, or at least they're enjoying the show.
I would just add this to this. I used to talk about this in my mixing clinics that I used to give a few years ago, was be on guard when you're mixing the show for yourself singing the lyrics, because you'll perceive the vocal louder than it actually is, right? So you got to kind of discipline yourself out of that and make sure you're, listening while hearing, that kind of thing, right? Dude, I can bust it.
He dances too.
I can sing those freaking songs, bro. So, the other thing I would tell you on this, it just seems appropriate to share this little anecdote. In the early 80s, I was mixing a pop band with a very, very popular male singer. And at these shows, it was all women and young girls. There was hardly any guys there. And the shows would start, and it was just 1K to 4K, like screaming, And I used to try to mix over it and try to get past it. And what would happen would be I'd mix the first 5, 6 songs trying to get over these screaming girls. And then it would go to the ballad, and they would all sit down and listen. And the PA would just be crushing the audience, And the band's manager finally came up to me at some point. He goes, I just need to share this with you. If they're screaming and yelling, they aren't listening, right? They're just singing the song. So just relax, just mix through it and prepare for the ballad. Make that the great sounding thing. It was just like this really kind of just simple insight. It's like, Yeah, if they're screaming and yelling, they're not listening. Okay.
So I have a Patreon and YouTube membership where people can subscribe to and pay to subscribe. So thank you guys who do that. One of the questions that's put up on there, how do you ask for more money?
Delicately.
Good luck.
And firmly.
Hey, I got an offer from this other band. I have
Why don't you
Dude, I have a career. I'm not going there.
Why don't you pay me what you think is fair has gotten me more money than having the nerve to ask for things. I think that would be about it. What do you think is fair for this?
I have my account manager do it for me. Keeps me out of the political mess when shit like that comes into play.
Look, if you're married, your wife is going to dictate how much you need to make. Okay, so I'm just throwing that out
The
there.
kids need braces.
You guys get paid for this?
I think having. So if you it depends on the situation, I guess. Like who you're talking to. You're talking to the artist management. You're talking to a production manager. You're talking to a business management. In a lot of the country music world, it's mostly dealing with business management, right? So they are looking at a spreadsheet. So you have to kind of come and understand how they're thinking. They're not going to think emotionally. They're not going to think maybe even practically. They want to just see the numbers and how it makes sense. So you have to be able to tangibly break down why you think you deserve X rate so that they can put it in their spreadsheet and logically make sense of it. I don't know if that, without giving like more example, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's what I do.
It is a complex answer. I mean, it's a simple question, but it is a complex answer. And you know, like the dynamic changes if you're chasing the act and trying to get the job, or they're coming to you trying to recruit you in. Very different dynamic there on stating a salary. You know, in either instance, I mean, this is going to sound like business legalese language, but you have to make a value proposition to the artist, the people that are paying you. You know, we know you can mix the show. What value are you bringing to the tour? You know, how can you help me justify this huge sum of money that you're asking me to pay you? You know, so you got to be skilled at that. That takes time. That takes experience to do it, and it's hard to pull off. I mean, you got to become a businessman. You can't go into it with emotion. You got to go into it very sober. You know,
and you have to be reliable. Like
100%.
That's a thing. Nobody pays us for when it's going great. They pay us to keep it from going sideways, right? These are not small artists. Nobody here on the stage is or anywhere in the audience. I'm looking around. There's a lot of heavyweights in this room right now. Like none of us get paid for when it's great. It's to keep it from going sideways. Every artist walks on stage with an ego, with a swagger, with whatever it is that they're bringing to the audience. And you're not to interrupt it for any kind of reason. And when you get to the point where they know, you can ask for money, right? You have a legitimate reason to ask. Listen, you know, you're never going to hear what your show sounds like. You'll never hear it. You're on stage. You can't possibly perceive what I am. Trust me, right? And then when management and other artists and everybody else starts to tell them, hey, this show sounds amazing, right? They've done the work for you. That's where I think the value is, as he's saying, right?
I mean, Frank touches on a very important part there, that you have to be strategic with it, right? You have to be timely with it. I mean, I'll give you this example, and I won't mention the artist because this is being recorded, but you'll probably figure it out. You know, at some point when I was working for an artist that I worked for a long period of time, my relationship with the artist got very strong. Like our bond was really good. To the point where at some point the manager started coming to me and saying, I need you to go convince him that we need to play this place. I need you to go talk to him and tell him we're going to do this. I'm like, I don't work on a freaking percentage here. You know, now I'm your guy going here. So, you know, at some point that turned into more money for me. Right? At some point it became, and it was a no-brainer for him at that point. You know, he knew that I was going to influence things that were going to make a lot of money. you know. And you have to do that with integrity. You can't just go be his voice. You have to be kind of that middleman to say, hey, okay, I know you want us to play that, but he is not going to dig doing that, you know. Like, you know, you become the voice of both of them at some point, and that becomes really, really valuable to a manager, you know. Now, he's not on the hot seat ever. You know, you're going to be on the hot seat if it goes wrong. So that becomes valuable, right? So value proposition, right? And at that point, then you can kind of come back and say, you know, this weekly thing is not working out for me. You know, I think I'm going to pull back. Oh, no, you can't go, you know.
People on.
Hey, we all know how valuable a commodity our ears are. Talk about strategies for protecting your hearing over time and taking into consideration the hearing of others.
Wear earplugs all the time when you're not mixing your show, and when you're around doing tedious tasks that don't involve listening. You know, keep your earplugs in. That's one of the things I do.
Yearly hearing test. I just did mine in December just to see it on a graph, talk to my audiologist, see what's going on. And same, like the Sensophonic with the filters in them, so you can still get a decent sound. It doesn't sound completely blocked off, but still protected.
All right, so this actually speaks to the very first question I answered up here, which was, at the end of the night, put in your earplugs while you're on the bus. None the least of which the roar of the bus is exhausting to your hearing. So I'll give you this anecdote. When I was living in Los Angeles in the 80s, I was doing a lot of studio work, a lot of other work, and I was regularly getting my hearing checked. And at the same time, I was doing live sound, a lot of big, kind of heavy shows. And I remember sitting down with my audiologist and talking to him about this, and his take on it was this. He goes, you know, I don't worry about you live sound guys. He goes, you don't have the issues. He says, you're only exposed to it for a couple hours a night. It's not truly long-term damage. It's impulsive. You're not hearing those SPLs constantly throughout the night. And he said to me, he said, if you can just average in some really, really quiet time to let your hearing recover, you'll be fine for years to come. And I started putting earplugs in at the end of the show that year and have done it every tour since then. So, you know, it's about it. And the thing that really came out of that kind of the gold that came out of it, you guys were probably never around in the 80s when we had these humongous PAs that could blister you, you know, wake up in the morning with your ears ringing. It took away the audio hangover. Like my audio hangover went away, and all of a sudden I noticed I was sleeping better, had more energy during the day, etc. So average in that quiet time, and you're probably going to be all right. And the counterpoint to that he gave me to prove his point, he goes, you know, I do audiology for about 80% of the scoring engineers here in Los Angeles. And he goes, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. He goes, you can't believe how bad their hearing is. He goes, I know guys that are mixing major, major products that have nothing above 4K in their hearing. And he said that's from sitting and listening at 88 dB for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. You know? So he said, live sound guys, yeah, just go have fun.
All right, we got time for one more quick question. Emphasis on quick.
This is going to be real quick. This is basically just tagging on what Robert just said, actually. So it's kind of a question, but more of a statement, actually. So I do it before the bus. I'm doing it the moment my gig's over because of people dropping stuff, chairs, metal, all of that. Same thing with load-in. If I don't need to hear it, my earplugs are in. So I go with my filters when I need to hear people talk, and then I go with my 50 dB plugs when I don't need to hear all that nonsense.
Yeah, to a point, but remember, you're in a construction site. Not being able to hear is...
But understand what I just said. I have filters, and then I have the 50 dB when I don't need to hear it. So it's a difference. So, yeah.
Cool. Oh, Mike Quick.
As over your careers for you guys, have you noticed a trend when you start going up and you have whatever gear you want, whatever PEA you want, that you're doing less processing on the consoles and more get the source right, in the sense of there's all kinds of capsules, there's all kinds of DIs. The artist has better gear because there's budget, do you find yourself pulling back on console processing and chasing the source more, or going, hey, we have this new thing on the desk, we can fix it? Because I've seen people answer it both ways, that sometimes the new plugin's good, sometimes a good capsule's better.
Absolutely not.
I try to do as little as possible.
Yeah, we're not trying to task the console to make something happen. You want the mic, the cable to the speaker. To me, again, the closest thing I want is what went into the microphone comes out a little better sounding than it went in, right? And then put it together with everything else. But not, I don't pick desks and I don't pick products because the ones and zeros sound better. It has nothing to do with what I do. Those are tools. They're not solutions.
Yeah, I would just add the most impactful results and improvements you'll get in your mixes is working on the source. Period. End of story.
Yeah, I concur. And it's a hard thing to achieve sometimes because a lot of musicians are very, very passionate about their tones, as it were, and sometimes they have no right to be. And you have to be also very diplomatic and, as Robert has said, very sober about approaching an artist. Like, hey, I appreciate what a great guitar player you are. It's not being represented by what's coming out of your amp. Let's work on that a little bit. And you have to be very delicate because these things are very sacred to these people. You know, some artists are very much tone nerds, where they want to get the most amazing tone and they want to dick around with microphone placement, and they have no problem doing that during rehearsal. And I hope all of you find an artist like that to work with. But a lot of times you're getting an XLR out of some modeler, and then like, all right, well, let's start spinning some knobs together. Let's find a sound that I don't have to fix yet again on the console while you're trying to fix it here on this computer thing that you call a guitar amp.
I also realized I'm an idiot. I have to 11:30, so we got 30 minutes. I'm wrong, so if we have more questions.
It's okay, Nick. We all knew you were an idiot. So.
Subscribe to my channel.
Hit the like button now.
Smash the like button.
Kind of bouncing on that, what you just said is virtual sound check's a great tool, because what the guitar player hears on the deck, they're like, it's perfect, and then you bring them out to front of house and they get to hear it through the PA and everything, and they're like, okay, cool, I kind of see what you're saying. It's a really good tool to use to work with the artist to get to that happy place or that meeting point.
Virtual sound check is the most amazing thing. I think you had a lot to do with developing that technology. Thank you.
You need to work on a version that will pop up on my XL4.
Guys, don't encourage him.
I started doing virtual sound check
with
on Gamble, so I can show you how to do it if you want to do it.
Yeah, we used to do that. Just flip it over.
Right.
One of the, kind of bouncing off what he was saying about getting the artist out front. It is one of the cool things about virtual sound check to allow you to do that. But the artist gets to come out and hear how you're presenting their music to the audience, and it can be ear-opening and eye-opening. Because let's face it. If we were guitar players or drummers, etc., you're kind of living in your own shell there. There's I don't think I could count them on one hand, but the number of number of musicians who can get a sound and kind of look and listen to what everybody else is doing and think, okay, this will work great in the mix, that are looking at it through that lens is very rare. They're looking insular, just thinking, I need to get my thing happening, not thinking about how it's going to be in context in the mix. And you can show them that in virtual, right? You can take it, I do this with Kenny Chesney and his guys, where I actually have reamp set up. Like I record guitar DI, and that's off their pedal board. I take one off of their guitar as well. So we can set up a reamp where I can actually play back their guitar from Pro Tools into their rig, and they can go and make adjustments on pedals, et cetera, to make it read better in the PA, right? So they can do live assessment of that guitar sound. So I got some stuff kind of working for this coming year that's going to be really cool with that. So we'll see how it goes.
First of all, thank you guys for being here. This is great, I think, for all of us. I would love to know the turning point where you went from someone who got a job at a club, or you were in a band and you started mixing because you were better at it than anybody else, or whatever. What was your turning point in your career where you either made a huge mistake and you had to correct it and said, hey, this is my launch pad. Or you did something extremely well, got noticed, and got asked to be a part of something even bigger. I would just love to hear you guys tell your story.
I don't want to go first again.
Baby
Anybody but Robert.
steps. Very baby steps. For me, when I was in college, working in the theater department at the college, and then I had my little cheesy cover band at the same time, and I was kind of in charge of all the audio stuff related with that. And then other local cheesy cover bands would say, hey, Arpad, we like the way your show sounded. We want to do our show. And then some of those guys went into clubs, and then some of them went into bigger clubs. And then I got a job working at a production house. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and just did a lot of corporate events and just learning audio that way. And then every now and then this production company would do a music festival. So 80% of the time I would be mixing a podium mic, and then every now and then get to mix a band. And then just slowly started meeting more and more people. And then from that company, one of them moved to Nashville to work with Claire Brothers. And that guy said, hey, you like my work? You should hire this guy, Tim. Tim comes down. Hey, you like my work? You should hire my buddy James. James comes down. Hey, you like my buddy Cam? Cam comes down. Hey, you like my work? Arpad come down. And we slowly just matriculated into Nashville just through word of mouth and just, always having that work ethic and just knowing enough about audio to make it work most of the time is all it takes. And for me, I can't pinpoint a singular period where I said, oh, this is what I need to be doing. I always enjoyed audio. I always enjoyed music. I mean, both my parents were musicians. My father was an engineer, electrical engineer, and so he always had that brainiac aspect of it. And it just seemed like an interesting thing to do. And then at some point I did realize, like, oh, there are people that actually have a job making music happen live. I wonder, and I was like 12 or 13 years old at that point. I was like, oh, let me investigate that. And I kind of saw in a magazine somewhere an ad for Claire Brothers monitors. I'm like, ooh, Claire Brothers, that sounds interesting. And then 20 years later, I'm working for them. I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's kind of the short version of my journey.
I was with the band that was getting ready to go on tour with Five Finger with Bruce, and we had a drum tech, which was me, and a guitar tech, and nobody else. And we're going into arenas, and I was like, we need somebody that can do some audio. So I bought an X32 on Sweetwater and some used Sennheiser wireless packs, and started doing monitors for the band. Hated doing monitors, and then from there just kind of progressed out to front of house after that. But I mean, it all started, I think, in middle school, because I could skip school to go do musicals and do the audio for my high school, and that was enjoyable. But that's kind of where, started from a drum tech and then moved out to front of house because we just needed somebody to do it.
Right place, right time, and not sucking when you got the shot is basically the short answer of it. I had gone to college for audio, but my degree is in recording engineering. And funny enough, I didn't work in a studio until 2 years ago. So I spent, 14 years of my career never working in a studio, and then until basically COVID. But really, just like when I got the ability to step up and get behind the console, it was because the other guy was being a dick, so he got fired. So the first thing I learned was rule number 1: don't be a dick. And then after that, it was like just trust your skill sets and be good at the basics. So sometimes just being in the right position, putting yourselves in the right situations where you might get a chance to sit at the chair is something that kind of got me where I came along to.
Right place, right time, for sure. And then one thing I could say is I've seen people kind of like, the reasons I got some opportunities I did get is because other people, they either had attitude issues. It wasn't necessarily they were bad at mixing. They either had attitude issues, or sometimes I've seen it where the artist just doesn't believe that they're interested in doing that for them anymore. So, like, if you can show passion for what you're doing, no matter what artist. I mean, I've worked for artists that I couldn't care less about, right? You know, like this is not my kind of music. This is kids bop or something, you know, like that's not something I want to do, but I'm going to show up, I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to like be excited to try to put on the best show that I can. And I think that is translated to me getting other work.
You know, if I fly up high enough and look down on my 45 years doing this, I can pick out 2 pivot points where I think that's when it started to go right. One was very early in my career. I was very young, maybe 21, 22, out mixing monitors on a major tour, one of the bigger tours of the year, and got fired off of it. And you know, it was one of those situations where it just required that you go home and look in the mirror and say, okay, why did that happen, all right? Because I had the skill to do it. Like, I had the technical skills to do the gig. What I did not have was the maturity to handle the artist, to have that relationship with the artist where he respected me, I respected him, it was mutual, and it grew. Didn't have that. I was too young for it. Right, so that was one. That was when I kind of went, okay, there's more to this gig than just being able to mix the show, right? The second was in another big tour that I was mixing in the mid 80s. You know, I mean, I was still very new at that point. I was only 25 years old. But during that tour, Joe Elliott from Def Leppard got a hold of one of my desk tapes. And this was right as they were finishing up Hysteria. And he called their manager and said, that's our guy. When we get ready to go tour, that's our guy. And the manager wasn't really having it. He was like, you know, I don't think so. I've heard a couple of his shows. I don't think he's it. And God bless Joe, he stuck to his guns and said, that's our guy. So the reason I bring that up is that everything that happened to me after that fell from that moment, right? And, you know, I've revealed this once before in my life, and I'm always so sketchy about saying this because it ends up sounding like gloating, but it's not gloating. It's to inform you of how to make this path work. So from that point on, in 1986, all of the marquee acts that I've worked for, Def Leppard, Rush, Tom Petty, Matchbox 20, Foreigner, Kenny Chesney, Jackson Browne, all of them, they all came after me. I didn't chase them. I didn't go looking for those gigs. They came to me. Right? So the lesson out of that is your personal brand and the quality of your work is your marketing, right? That is how you get the gigs. You've got to have a reputation, and you've got to treat it like gold, right? You got to do it with integrity. You got to do it well. And once you do that, it's easy. I saw an interview on TV, I don't know how many years ago, and I've actually seen snippets of this online, of Steve Martin, not being Steve Martin, wasn't being funny. He was talking about how to get in his career. And he was saying, you know, everybody used to always ask him, how do you get into Hollywood? How do you get making movies? How do you get into acting, et cetera? You know, like looking for this golden key to unlock it all. And his response was really cool. It was just like, you just have to become undeniable, right? You have to get good enough at your craft where you become the first choice, where you don't have to fight for the gig. You're the one they want in the first place, right? Takes time, takes steady work, but you got to get to that point. Once you get to that point, I'm not going to say it just becomes easy, but then it becomes really, really fun. I'll say this, I never got a gig I chased. All the ones I wanted to do, I never got. I mean, that's the irony of it all, but it's worked out pretty good.
For me, it was years of never turning down any gig. Just the idea that every step meant it was going to be a learning experience for the next step. And it was also a good way to be prepared for when the opportunity did come. And I got to learn a lot of lessons from a lot of great engineers. I got to learn a lot of lessons from at somebody else's expense, right? If you pay attention, not just to what you're doing, but everywhere around you, like you said, your brand, what you are, and your work is going to be in front of you, and it's also going to be behind you when you leave the place, right? You're not trying to burn bridges everywhere, proving that you're the greatest person on earth. It's like burying yourself alive to prove you can use a shovel. You do the best work you could possibly do all the time. All the time. There are no off days. There are no days when you can like be less than, right? Because none of these artists want to be. Take it as seriously as they take their career, right?
We're all doing it. Okay. To say something slightly different, I guess. I would say that there's probably, in my opinion, always kind of younger people are asking me like, how do you get started? I'll say there's either two ways. I think you can go kind of the PA company direction, or you can kind of go working for band direction. And PA company direction, obviously, it doesn't automatically as much normally, in my experience or knowledge of, fall into a place of mixing. Normally, you're working your way up the ladder through the PA company, and like some of these guys said, they were system engineers before, and then they started mixing. But that is one route, and then the other route is like van. Well, in my experience, was like a van and trailer, and you're just making not much money or any money at all, and then you kind of just work your way up. And I just worked my way up from doing clubs to bigger clubs to small theaters to being on support with a arena or shed tour and that sort of thing, and then finally getting the step where you are then headlining in those kind of capacities. And I think, to what Frank said, being available and being willing to take, especially when you have maybe less responsibility or not a family and that sort of thing, to have to be making a certain amount of money. If you can get by not making much money and taking whatever gig may come along, then you're going to progress yourself. And I'll also say this as a close would be, if you're able to do multiple roles and you want to not go the PA company route and you want to just work for a band, if you're able to do multiple roles like TM front of house or PM front of house or something like that, you will make yourself a lot more attractive for getting work. Because people want to try to, especially on smaller tours or maybe not the biggest ones, they want to try to have less people on the road, less expenses and that sort of thing. So the more you can do, the more work you'll likely have as well.
From the beginning of my career, I always tried to build a relationship with artists directly. I never really worked for a sound company other than a couple little gigs here and there more recently, I guess. But building a relationship with artists, meeting bands, and convincing them that you are the person that can make their show better is what I've done. And it's a hard skill, because like, how do you meet a band? Like, like the band I currently work for, I met the leader of the band and I convinced him I'm the best guy. And that's, I don't know how to like do that skill or whatever, say that skill, but that's what I do.
I mean, I've had people ask me that. It's like, how did you meet these bands? It's like, I didn't meet any of them. They showed up on my riser one night listening to me work, and then the next day, they called me and said, let's go. That's the best way. Yeah, it is the best way, for sure. But it's nerve-wracking, I'll tell you that. So.
There's no off days. You can't. Consistency is king, and is king in what we do. You never know who is going to be in the audience. You never know who's going to be listening to your work. It really is the way, because nobody can hear you mix on the internet. Nobody can hear you complain about this, that, or the other, right? When you're sitting and all of a sudden you're in Los Angeles, and God is my witness, how many people have we seen fold in New York City or Los Angeles because they changed their running shoes before the big race to do something different to show the audience or management or somebody that they've got an extra gear in them that really didn't need to be there, and then they do something dumb, right? That has happened. I don't even have to look left or right. I can see heads shaking already. It just happens, right? Consistency in what we do is king. You can be an A- student 30 days of the month is better than an A+ once, right?
I'll say two connections as well. Obviously, I mean, that probably goes without being said, but the more people you know, and I think you can go the band route as well, or be noticed by bands. But I mean, I think the more people you know in the industry, whether it be at sound companies, whether it be fellow engineers, whether it be people in different bands. Like, if you know folks, the more people you know, the more opportunities you're going to have. And so fostering relationships with people, building a community, you know, I still do work, I tour with and work around people I went to college with over 20 years ago. So like it's really cool that we still have a community of people that we all work in the same industry still. So build those communities, foster those relationships, and that will help you pass gigs to you and that sort of thing too.
The hang is just as important as your skill set. We live on buses and jets and planes, trains, the whole 9 yards. You, at the end of the night, have to live with all of your coworkers. You know, they're typically on the bunk above you, a bunk below you, beside you, whatever. So your people skill set, I think, is also the way to foster that reputation, is that it's not just your skill set. You need to be an excellent engineer. But if you're an excellent engineer that's also an excellent hang, that whole network of people, you're more likely to get hired than not. Because if you're not a good hang and you're just like, oh, this guy's an amazing engineer, but he's hard to work with, well, you know, you might get passed over. So that, you know, that reputation is just as important, in my opinion.
So you travel on the bus with the little people, Kyle? Is that right?
He's
I don't
picking on
get
me
a
because
jet. That's odd. I don't
I'm
know.
spoiled. My bus has 4 people on it. It's me, my artist, and you know. But yeah, but no, the hang is important.
Hi guys.
Sorry, I gotta be better moderator. Shut up.
Hey, no worries. Hey, question for the whole panel. How do we, especially as students who don't have a ton of connections, find mentorship from better engineers and people that have already walked the path we're on?
This is delacruz.com. Like and subscribe.
I mean, I think you can talk to the people at Clare Brothers, because I think, from what I've heard, that they have something like that set up where they can send some of these students out for a weekend with certain bands, and if the engineers are willing and have the capacity to impart wisdom. I mean, that's one avenue I think you can pursue. I'm not guaranteeing that that's what's going on, but I've heard rumblings of such things. Outside of that, it's hard because a tour doesn't want to take the liability on legally to bring some stranger out just to shadow somebody else, because it just gets into it can potentially get into a nightmarish situation.
I was a stagehand. That's how I met Robert. He doesn't know it. I met Greg Price.
You were that guy, huh? Okay.
No, I literally mopped the floors on a tour. So I came through Great Woods and I sat behind front of house and watched these guys go through line check with Rush. And then a couple of weeks later, I saw Moody Blues in Chicago, and it was Greg Price and somebody else, like luminary engineers of, again, the greatest who've ever done it. And you get to see that and just be cool, right? That was, again, for me, like, wow, this is badass. Look at what they're doing. They're traveling around with the studio, but they're not making records, right? It's that was the way for me, like meeting guys that way, and girls too, for that matter. There were some that were, in any case, like that was my path, how I got mentorship out of some of them, and then begged them for a job, which they had nothing to do with.
Being the house sound engineer, being a stagehand, like at a club or a venue, or being a stagehand is a great way to get in, to be in the presence of people that you wouldn't normally be able to hang out with and talk to or whatever.
Yeah, the common thread that they're saying here, if you're not pulling it out of it, is you got to be in the right place at the right time. But the first part of that is you got to be in the right place, right? So you got to be in the environment. Just do whatever you can do to get in the environment and be present,
One of the things that's been the heart of my whole social media, my channel, is to do networking and connecting people and to help break down those barriers. I have a This is Dela Cruz app where a lot of these people are on. You actually can be a verified pro member. You send an application for it, and if you're a legit person, you get a verified badge with it. But there's going to be a lot of things coming down the pipeline where I want to be able to network and connect people and do mentorship. We got some cool things we're working on to what does a residency actually look like? Is that even possible to do? I don't know. Is that possible to do? How can we do some mentorships? We can go online and actually book time with people one-on-one. So It's a few questions, little things that will be coming down the pipeline. That's the entire heart of what I'm doing, is to help bring this to everybody and break down the barriers and give a realistic example of what this is, because this is awesome, but this also sucks sometimes too. I feel like I've talked to more people out of touring than actually going in tour. Like, what's your goals? Are you a family person? Do you want to be on all the holidays? Or do you, that 90 minutes or 30 minutes is a very small bit of a very, very, very long, stressful day. And I really equate this to being from someone who's in the military, like on deployments. I mean, coming back off the road is super tough. How do you transition back to a family who's had their routines and everything in place, where you've been the outlier with that? It's tough. Who else got a question? Right there. Oh, you're next. Sorry, I know you've been waiting. Either one.
In your experience, how do you approach your relationship with your monitor engineer when it comes to making audio decisions? I know this is a front of house panel, but I gotta represent the monitor guys.
How do we approach it?
How do you approach your relationship with your monitor engineer when it comes to making input decisions and microphone choices and all the audio related things, because there's, one set of inputs but two people that have to deal with it?
I think I normally am the one that would dictate what the input list is and the mics and the positions and stuff. And then if the monitor engineer were having a challenge or a problem, then we might address that, and sometimes he might add his own mic that he's only like on a drum or something, I don't know. But yeah, normally I think we're the ones that dictate that.
We just go down the list and start using generic this, that, and the other, get to rehearsals, and then we find what we like, don't like, change the mics out. And once it works for both of us, we're pretty much 90% of the way there. But yeah, there's a little audition process. But we start with the basics, 91, and we move on and just keep trying things until we find something that works specifically for it.
If the monitor engineer has a suggestion or something, I'm open to trying it.
I will take that under consideration.
Please put your complaint card in the box, yes. I mean, usually by the end of the tour, maybe the end of the tour party, I will actually get introduced to them and know their first name. So, I mean, it works out pretty good. So, hey, Brian, see you next tour, man.
Well, you have so many of them, though.
I know.
Can we get her the mic as well?
But I would just mean this sincerely. I have great respect for monitor engineers and what they do. And especially now that, now that we're on ears with everybody, certainly with Kenny, I know everybody's on ears. Like, there are times when those monitor guys will hear things going on with a microphone or an input or a placement that I'm not hearing or not, not picking up on. So, I tried to put that in play very early with Brian and Phil, our monitor guys, saying, hey, if something's up, speak up, man. Yeah.
Communication.
Well, we don't talk about it in party circles, but but seriously, I mean, they're listening listening through such a different lens up there that they'll hear things that I just simply won't hear, and it will improve the show. So you got to be open to it. Hey, everybody's got skills here.
Even I rely on the monitor engineer a lot for telling me how it feels on stage with the subwoofers and things like that. If I immediately want to know if the subs are just crushing the stage, so I can alleviate that so I don't get spoken to by the band.
All right, last question.
So I was wondering how ethics plays a role. Like, if you guys have ever had a show or an event or a tour that you turned down just based on like your religious or your political beliefs, just if they aligned with the band or the event that was happening or not.
Wow, good question.
I've never turned down a job.
It would have to be.
I honestly don't care who it's for. Whatever they think, I don't care. I'm more alert to what they know. After that, I don't care.
I concur with that. It would have to be a significantly egregious offense for me to turn something down. I mean, like, I don't even want to say it out loud.
I will fully admit here that I have walked off of a tour because of that. But it was more about just kind of, I got to a point emotionally where I was so wrung out on the tour from having to deal with the guy that I just said, I got to leave this. I mean, I'm mentally crumbling here. I remember mornings waking up on the bus and looking out the window at the gig and literally getting nauseous, thinking, I got to go in and deal with this fucking guy. You know, so at some point I kind of woke up to that and went, I got to leave this. This is not healthy.
What's pucking?
Yeah, pucking. So in that regard, yes, religion, politics, and not at this point. No.
Cool. This is actually the real wrap up. So what I want to do real quick is we'll go from this way. Where can people follow you on social media? And if there's anything that you want to plug, go ahead and plug. You got any books coming out? Any talk shows? Any movies?
I mean, it's just my name on my Facebook thing or whatever. I don't know. What is it? I don't even know what it is.
You don't know your Instagram?
I mean, Bruce Ryder.
Bruce, didn't we just talk about personal brand and it's okay?
I'm not advertising like that. I don't. My personal brand is with the artist.
Smith_Trey on Instagram, Facebook, and that sort of thing. Trey Smith.
Boom.
Hang on, man. I'm trying to see what my thing is here, man.
You can follow me on nickdelacruz.com.
Is that yeah? There it is. Frank Scambolone at Instagram. That's it.
Robert, go ahead.
That's really all I got, man.
I need to look these guys up.
This is going to be embarrassing now. Okay, so Robert Scoville at Facebook, Robert Scoville on Instagram, www.robertscoville.com. Every Thursday night at about 4:20 West Coast time, I run a thing called the Back Lounge. It's purely social. Anybody can show up. Conversation goes everywhere. I've been doing that since the pandemic, so it's been running for about 5 or 6 years. Just go to robertscoville.com, sign up. You'll get the email alerts when we have them. I probably have them. I try to have them every week, but sometimes schedule will step on it, et cetera. And then, of course, I'm on this website for this knob end that runs all these social media campaigns. I don't know, but so you can probably find me on there as well. I don't know.
Kenneth Sellers on Gmail and Instagram and Facebook. Just my full name. So email me, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook. I'm happy to answer questions or chit chat about whatever.
Just Kyle_Gerhardt everywhere. Email me, Google me, whatever. Send me a message and I will answer it. Yeah. If you Google me, you can find all the. It's the easiest way to find the stuff. My phone number's out there.
Just learning from you, Robert.
Same. All the social medias, just at Brian Hardiswick, and utilize this campus to your most here in Nashville. Now that we have this, there's tons of events like this right here, for example. Tons more coming up. So utilize Rock Nashville. It's gonna be great.
Arpadium@gmail.com. It's Arpadium like a stadium, only smaller. And outside of that, come see a Chris Stapleton show. I got nothing else.
All my stuff is under This Is Dela Cruz. There's an interview pretty much every week. You can see ones with everybody here except him. And you. Let's talk after this round. Thank you guys for coming. Please come up and ask questions. I'll have some stickers and stuff, so thank you. We did it.